Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to the channel. My name is Alckemy. Today, we are going to be doing the Serum clone shootout. It is not going to include Faceplant because Faceplant is not a Serum clone. It is in a league of its own. Fight me, I don't care, whatever. What we are going to be comparing are Vital Current Pigments and Serum 2, and I'm going to do my best to try to give you just information on what to pick and what to buy without me telling you which one you should actually get. An easy no-brainer before we even do anything else is Vital is free. So if you have a budget, or you don't have a budget rather, for music production and you want access to something that a lot of people are making content for in the first place, most of the Serum tutorials out there on YouTube will apply to all of these as well, with a couple of exceptions. And I actually probably have these. No, I'd still put current next to Serum 2, but Serum 2, current, pigments, vital, that would be the order. I know that some people are really passionate about pigments, but what can you say? I'll try my best to be unbiased. So anyways, the thing about these synthesizers is that they all have pretty much 2 to 3 oscillators here that and a sampler to some degree. They are sent into filters, they go into some kind of modulation source that you can drag to map, and then they usually have a list of effects that kind of look something like this. Some of them have, actually I think all of them have a matrix table. Maybe not pigments, I'd have to double check, but they can utilize things like remapping and all that. If you know what it is, then you know. And I think that most of these now also have cool unison options, which we're going to explore in the other ones. But I would say, excuse me, the main draw of why to use Vital over everything else, beside it being free, is that it actually has a wavetable maker, which these two do not. Serum does, and I'd prefer to use Serum over everything else, but there are some cool wavetable options. There's also some cool unique morphing options, like vocoding a wavetable. I think this is the only one. That's not true. Maybe Current does, but you have 2 different like warping sources behind everything else. And this was something that I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think now most of these are a standard. So I don't think that Vital has anything that's particularly unique about it anymore. Feel free to leave in the comments if I'm wrong, but I can't think of anything else off of the top of my head other than like very specific things. But yeah, because it has a wavetable, it also has stuff like text to speech and stuff. This is something that you can design so many sounds with. And it also has its own versions of like warping and all that other stuff that you can add. It has cool keyframing options to be able to change the wavetable and do neat stuff. And this is a great introduction to a lot of different kinds of synthesis in general. There's no reason not to have Vital if you don't want to spend money. Just get Vital. Let's talk about Current. So Current is priced at 200 bucks, and just like Pigments. The thing about Current that I would say stands out from the rest of the synths, in my opinion, are the effects. And that is probably the most disappointing thing about Pigments, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's got its own cool stuff. But the effects are also in, you can buy them standalone, or you can subscribe to like this subscription thing to where you get updates. But the key thing of Current is that it's connected to a stream. And the thing about the stream is that it's designed to kind of just be a very quick access way to get to sounds without having to do any sound design in the first place. The most disappointing thing for me inside of Current is that it does not have a wavetable maker. And this isn't very consumer friendly because I do make packs for Current. I've got one, I'm working on a second one, and then I'll do a Serum pack or whatever. But yeah, the problem with it is that you have to outsource different wavetables. Now, don't get me wrong, it comes with a bunch, and it kind of pushes you into being encouraged to use their stream for all different stuff, for wavetables or whatever. But at the same time, I'm the kind of person that would be making that stuff for somebody like you. You know what I'm saying? And that would be my personal gripe or whatever. That being said, Current sounds great. I think that it sounds better than Faceplant primarily because of the effects. One thing that this has that the other one doesn't, or the other ones don't, none of these have this, is something like a Morph EQ, to where you can create, I think like, I want to say like 24 band filters or whatever. The other ones have parametric EQ or something kind of to the sort, but it's usually only like 3 bands. The only other exception to that, I think Pigments has like a 5-band EQ, and then Serum has this brand new like morphing type filter, which I'll show here in a second, but it doesn't compare to the usability of this. it's kind of ironic because as cool as this is, I actually don't like the DSP of this. Maybe because it just the way that it colors the sound or whatever. But its utility is on paper really cool. You can shift it. You can actually drag cool keyframes with it. Sorry, I'm holding a coffee with my other hand, but this is something that is extremely handy for bass design and all that other stuff. Which I will say, one other kind of disappointing thing about Vital, which I think is the only one now, is that with the effects in Vital, you can only have one instance of each effect, where I think in current Pigments and Serum 2, you can have multiple instances of the same thing. But yeah, so if you look here, you can kind of drag this and make it morph and stuff over time. To be honest with you though, if you have access to a couple of EQs, just as a, hey, here's a quick tip, and you use, or you're doing some kind of bass design to try to make it talking and stuff, instead of it doing the whole morph thing, you can just set it to the scale to where you can go like this and then just bump it up like that. That's a really old quote unquote like Skrillex trick. Works great for neurobass, growl bass, dubstep, whatever. Most of the, I think all of these can do that to some capacity. Yeah. So some other unique things about this are that it has this kind of play thing right here, which I think is kind of nice. Usually there's some kind of fancy picture on here, perhaps maybe one that's not from me. Let's just pull something like this up, and it looks pretty to look at. And what this does is you have an X and Y with this, which is usually a macro 1 and 2, and I think 3 and 4. You can map it to anything and then kind of have like an expressive thing. Looks great on stream or whatever. I don't personally care for it, but it's nice to look at. And then you also have granular engine, which Vital does not have. All the other ones have this. Then you have a sub engine, which is kind of like a really quick, very basic, but still relatively powerful additive engine that's, I think, more so designed for drums than anything else. So it's designed to give you a really cool fundamental. It's also good for physical modeling. I think that it's also just nice to have. It's kind of like the replacement for the regular sub, I guess, if you will. It's actually called sub, but you can use it for that, and there's cool warping and things that you can do with that. Since we're on that topic, the wave morphing has its own unique set of things that you can do, both from a filter position and also from pitch. So, you know, maybe you like that characteristic of sound or whatever it's doing to the waveform, and this is kind of their answer to not being able to do wavetable synthesis or like having a wavetable editor. So it's like a midpoint, I guess. I still want the wavetable maker. Come on. Yeah. Some other things about this are that you can actually do some interesting feedback with this. So this can feedback into itself. I don't know if the other ones can do that or not. I think this is the only one that can, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure that somebody will correct me, but there's that. Then I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You have an ARP and chord mode, which I believe that these three do now, which Vital does not. I don't really use this stuff, to be honest, but it is kind of handy to have. We'll talk about the other ones here in just a second. But other than that, really the main draw point about why somebody would use Current is because it's trying to cater to the preset workflow. It's a very capable synth. I think that this, if I had to pick between all of them, I would say that Current sits at number 2 as far as sound quality wise. And what do I mean by that? It sounds rich, it sounds full, it doesn't sound kind of like dingy. It sounds like it could be a hardware synthesizer, or you know what I mean? It has a very enriching sound. It's kind of hard to describe sound like that and what dictates quality and stuff, but that's just my personal opinion. Oh, the last thing that this has that none of the other plugins have, which is probably one of the most important things, is that every device has a clipper built into it. Soft clipping or hard clipping. But what that means is that you can clip in stages. And because you can clip in stages with this, it means that you can get some really, really loud sounds. Now, don't get me wrong. You can always do processing on the outside. And even with this, I still probably would do some things with it. But having multiple fuse compressors that are up to 6 bands and just pushing everything to the max, you can get some nice, just heavy, heavy sounds with it. Let's move on to Pigments. Pigments is unfortunately my most disappointing one with all of this stuff. As you can see, I don't actually own it, so I might have to go into... No, it's fine. I think that we can demo it without doing sounds, but the main draw behind this is it's kind of like a Serum answer when it first came out. I don't even remember when the first instance was released, but my biggest complaint with it is that it does not have a wavetable maker. It does have some cool phase options though. If you look at the wavetable here, down here you've got this list of stuff, and you can use either a modulator or you can use the second engine here in order to do not just FM, but you can do wave folding, phase transformation, phase mod, frequency mod, all that stuff at the same time. But I just, yeah, it's not, it sounds cool on paper, but it's not really my favorite. I just don't think that it sounds that great. And not having a wavetable maker, especially for how old this is criminal since we're on version 6. But anyways, some things that are cool about it is that it's got a harmonic and modal engine. And so because of that, you can use this for very basic additive synthesis. You can also use this for some physical modeling. So this says string, beam. I guess it's just these two, to where beam is where you create things like xylophone / marimba. And then strings obviously are where you're doing something like that. Goes into 2 filters. One of the other things about this that I'm kind of let down by is that this has 6 to 9 effects. I'm pretty sure that current also only has 9 effects, but this has 2 main effects and then it goes into an auxiliary. And I guess, yeah. So with that, you have these drop down menus, which there's a nice, I guess, array of different effects. Thank you for the follow. But yeah, I don't know. It's okay. I guess I just don't vibe with it that much. One cool thing about this is that it does also have a built-in. There is a preset here that has a very hard limiter on this, provided that you don't turn this up. So you can do some kind of clipping in multiple stages and all that. But other than that, I don't really, yeah, it's just not my synth. One other cool thing about this is with the sample, or the granular rather, if we go into the synth, then you can actually have up to 6 layers with different sounds and whatever and control them individually, which is kind of cool. You can kind of do some basic editing to the waveform and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of cool. I'm trying to think about if there's anything else about this that's unique. There is the sequencer on here. I wish that you had offsetting with the sequencer, but you know, it's not the worst in the world. And it's also kind of strange that they change it from sync to BPM as opposed to just the rate. It's fine, but it's just, I don't know, it's an odd choice. But yeah, sequencer, arpeggiator, it's definitely an option in there. You've got your standard LFOs and your randoms. Yeah, I think the synth looks pretty. I'll give it that. Cool. So moving on to Serum 2. This is the latest and greatest. And I think that the reason why this one stands out so strongly is because just the sheer amount of features, the legacy content, the amount of tutorials that are already online for it. It's kind of, and since 2014, it was an industry standard. And I think that that's probably not going to change, even though I would still say that Faceplant is my favorite. I still think Faceplant is the best synth on the market. But this has so many good things about it, especially with the update, that I'm like, oh, I'm excited about this. So what this has that's a little bit different compared to the others is the spectral. It also has unlimited effects, which is different than all of these. So if we go to the effects here, you can just add as many as you want now, which is a new thing. We also have a MIDI editor. You can export this by just dragging the clip out if you want to. It's got a Fugue machine built into it. You can check out the review of Serum if you want more details on that. It's got also a built-in ARP. You can send this to MIDI through, so that way it will only play the MIDI. I'm not sure if Pigments can do that or not, but that would be a nice feature if you're just wanting to use it for a MIDI generator or whatever. Yeah, within the spectral filter, you've got a lot of unique options with this stuff. And I do think that also Pigments and Serum and Vital can do text to speech, which I don't personally care for. I think it's kind of a gimmick, but maybe somebody's into that robotic stuff. It supports multi-sample mode. So if you have a sound font, then you can load that in here. And something that's kind of cool is that you can spread these out with key tracking, or like key mapping rather. So you can say multi-sample is going to be mapped to this octave. Wavetable is going to be mapped to this octave. Then the second wavetable is going to be mapped to this octave, and essentially play it as a multi-useful instrument, which is kind of nice. With that being said, remapping is introduced. You can pull this up. So that's kind of a thing that both Vital and Serum have. I think Current kind of has something that's like this, but I think it's a little bit more generic. And then I'm trying to think about what else is really big with this. Right, the filter. So one cool thing about this, which I was complaining about it at first, but it's not terrible, is that this is actually a 4-vector morph filter. So if you open this up, then you can utilize this and create some vowel shapes, kind of like so. And then with this, you'll notice that if I drag over here, you'll see that it will transform into that filter. And so if I do this to filter 3 and just do some kind of generic thing or whatever, this is more for the sake of trying to drive a point home rather than impress you with sound design, then I should have just kept that open, I'm sorry. You can do something like that. And then let's do 2, and then I'll just do a notch on 2. There you go. So this is pretty unique. I think this is the only thing out of all of the synthesizers, the big 5, we'll say, between Phaseplant and Pigments, Currents, Vital, Serum, that can morph between something like this. It's not a parametric EQ. I'd still prefer a parametric, but it's still usable. It's still pretty interesting to work with. There are some unique effects, kind of like the bode, which is, an echo bode, if you're familiar with it. There's a built-in frequency splitter on this, which the other ones don't have, which is kind of nice. You can still get away with it by utilizing the filters about having one filter in parallel send to whatever, but the other synthesizers don't have as much control with the routing. So this would be better for bass design objectively, just because it has this. Like, you can't really argue with that. It's more control, right? And that's what sound design is all about, is being a control freak. The other cool feature that might be worth mentioning is the resample workflow. So if I have something like this and I just hit, sorry, my keyboard is off, but let me turn it back on. If I do that and I come over here and drag this out and then drag it back in, I can internally resample this as many times as I want to. I do know that Vital has the resample to an oscillator, but I don't think that it does it to a sample. And because of that, you can change this into granular and all that other stuff, which is another thing I'm going to talk about here in just a second. But because of that, you can continue to push this through effects and then just go bloop, bloop, and continue to feed this. And this is probably one of the best features about Serum 2 and even Serum 1. The thing about Serum 1 was that it didn't support samples like that. There was a sampler, but it was just this, and it was very basic. Whereas with this, it's actually a full-blown. And the other thing that's actually fantastic about this is that because everything is fit within the oscillators here, you can switch with the same sample between granular, sample, and spectral. And I love that. I love that I can kind of just audition that without having to change or reload the sample, which I actually have to do in something like Phaseplant. I don't know if Pigments, I'm not sure if Pigments does that, but let's find out since we're doing this together. Might as well, right? So if I have a sample in here, and this is at CPN 03, and then I change this into granular. Yeah, so I guess it just has a granular mode. So this would be equivalent. I guess that's something to consider. I guess it doesn't have the spectral engine though, so that's also a special consideration. And then if you change it to multi-sample, you have to load a sound font, so don't expect to see the same thing there. This has a lot more unison options now as well. Linear, super, exponential, inverted, random, and then you've got stacking, which you can just get some crazy sounds. This is going to destroy your CPU if you do that, but it's great for analog sounds or whatever. But yeah, this also has key mapping as well, which I know that Current does. Kind of at the bottom, you can set stuff to a key. I know that Serum 2 has way more scales, and I think that, yeah, you can do the oscillator mapping. Does Pigments have that? I don't think so. I don't think Pigments has like a key filter or whatever. That's okay. Just wondering. Yeah, so Current and Serum 2 have the scale stuff. I think that's pretty much it. I can't really think about anything else major that I'm missing. If you want more information on this stuff, I have reviews on all of these. The only one that's not up to date is Pigment 6. But I have a Vital review. I've got a Current review. I have the Serum 2 review, which I did just a couple of days ago, and talked about all the new features and stuff and workflow and all that. But yeah, I really don't want to tell you which one to get or that you should get one. I think that Pigments is normally 200 bucks. It goes on sale a lot. I think that Serum 2, I don't actually know. So X for Records. I think that this is currently on sale right now for like 189. Let me sign out of this. Yeah, so this is normally 250, so this is the most expensive one, but you get lifetime updates. So if you hold on to it for 10 years, then you might get Serum 3 if you're still alive. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it is on sale for 60 bucks off. Let's see, if we go to Arturia, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Arturia, when it's not on sale, is 199. Products, software, oops, went to the wrong one. Software instruments. Pigments is currently 199. Vital is free. So pretty much I would say that you have like your low tier premium, you have your mid tier premium, but if you were looking for an order, this would be number 1, this would be number 2, this would be number 3, this would be number 4 for me. Unbutton your muscle shirt, you know, before you hate in the comments of Pigments and all that other stuff. Whatever, guys, I sound design a lot professionally. That is actually how I make all my money, and I don't just do very basic stuff. I break things, and I have the experience of, you know what I mean, knowing what these things do. In my personal opinion, before you type in your smooth brain comment or whatever, I've used all of these extensively, and from my experience, this is my top choices. Hopefully the explanation is there. So if I had to just give you a quick rundown of all that, I don't really want to go into more detail over the other ones. That would be what I say. But let me know in the comments what your favorite is. Tell me why I'm wrong. I don't really care. What I would care about is if you could potentially like the video if you got this far into it. The other thing is if you want to support the channel on alckemy.com, you can become a member. You can check out my music both on YouTube and on alckemy.com as well. Join the Discord. We're doing a really cool new thing at the beginning of streams right here, where it's called Everyday Quick Play Spells, where at the beginning of every stream, I'll just play these out, which is 15 seconds of sound. That could be anything. I really kind of want to push this because I want more people to do it, but it's kind of like the upscale. Shout out to Frequent and Hudson Lee for kind of coming up with this. But if you want to, you know, be held accountable for making music and stuff, and you want your stuff played, just 15 seconds of a beat, 15 seconds of a, you know, of a thing. Just please keep it safe for work and don't, you know, try to do anything insane. Yeah, cool. So with that, thanks everybody. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that this gave you enough information to make a choice on, you know, what is going to be best for you. But the final thing that I'll leave you off with is don't buy anything until you demo it. So don't take my word for it. Try it out for yourself, see what you really like, and find what you enjoy vibing with. I'll see you on the next one.